All right, Samir, let's get started. And first thing we'd like to discuss about the topology, how they are connected. In this environment, we are using firewall. So though there is no use of firewall as of now, but I'm just showing the topology so that you should be aware of the overall the connectivity. So we have a firewall. This is outside internet where it is connected to R2 and it is connected to inside switch. There are two subinterfaces. One is subinterface going to DMZ and the other subinterface goes to inside. So the network over here will be 140.1.144.0 will be inside network, and the DMZ network will be 172.168.100.0/24. These are the two ISE we have got. .92, 100.92 ISE1, 100.93 ISE2. We have Active Directory and Certificate Authority as well, .96, and the SFTP is also 96 itself.
So that switch interface, which is ICE is placed in, it's a it's a DMZ interface.
Yes. So we have deployed ESXi, and on that ESXi we have deployed ICE.
And they are in DMZ.
Yes, okay. They're in VMware. So as of now, ICE1 is in running, but ICE2 I haven't installed. Just for demonstration purpose, I just left it blank. So the installation anyways will perform.
So DMZ, it's in DMZ, right?
It is in DMZ, yes.
Okay, all right.
Right, and this is the test PC that I will be connecting to the switch in order to test maybe the MAC access bypass or the other authentication or authorization using the ISE. And if it is required, we will add more components, more equipments in this topology. If I do add, I'll just let you know.
Okay. So authentication and authorization. Can you brush some fundamentals there?
Authentication and authorization. Okay, in that case, let me open PPT. All right. So as you see this document, the whole component, it is called AAA. So AAA is like authentication, authorization, and accounting and auditing. Sometimes we do say accounting, sometimes we do say auditing, right? So authentication is where authenticating the endpoints, right? Whether the endpoint who is going to connect to me is valid or not. So for example, endpoints like routers. I'm talking from the network perspective as of now. So if I have a router and if I'm trying to log into the router, right, the authentication will be happening, right? So there has to be some authentication server through which it should get authenticate, right? Like adding the machine, adding the endpoint, adding the end user, let's say the desktop, right? If you are getting connected to the network, right? So the first thing what will happen is the message will be sent to the authentication server. In this case, we are using ISE, right? And ISE will verify who you are, whether ISE has got the record of you. If it has got, then you are the authenticated, you are the valid user. But if it doesn't, then you are not valid user, and ultimately you cannot connect to the network, right? So that is how we nowadays implement the security as well. I mean, in order to, as I told you, I mean, if you talk about the security, it is not like from the security breach or the threats or the malware or the attacks will be coming always from outside. No, not like that. It can be internally as well.
So it is just user ID and password authentication, right?
Yes.
For device.
Right. Either user ID and password, either the MAC address as well. So let's say I don't want to go for the user ID and password first. I want to go with the let's say the hardware authentication. Well, let's say the user A has joined the company and we have assigned that laptop to that user A. All right. Now, whenever user A first time it gets connected, all right, ISE will check, do I have its MAC address in my database? No, I don't have. So it seems it seems he is to be the new user, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now the whoever is managing ISE, let's say the engineer, will be checking, okay, what the MAC address is and what is the user that it is connected to. Okay, this seems to be the new user. Let me authenticate after verifying, after going to the all document, maybe that, okay, yes, he has to be the valid user, right? Let me authenticate it. So now that machine, that laptop has been added to ISE database as in the authenticate, as a valid device, valid hardware.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, in order to access it, you have to use username and password,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay. Yes. Okay.
All right. Authorization is once you are validated that you are a valid user, what privilege level that you have to be assigned. The privilege level, whether with the full control, right? Or maybe the read access only, or read write access, or the read modify, or the write access, right? In case, for example, if you are trying to log in any of the router with the
Mm-hmm.
username and you are the part of, let's say, monitoring, where you're not supposed to make major changes, right? So in that case, we as a network engineer, what we'll do, we'll create a user account for you with the less privilege, where you can see only the show commands, you can perform only the show commands and the basic, the diagnostic commands, that's all.
Right.
So the moment you get connected, you will be given the authorization level. Okay, you are authorized for, let's say, privilege level 4 or 5, or based on your requirement,
Right.
right? Once you have got the authorization of the privilege level, accounting or auditing. So now whatever activity you are performing on that hardware, right, everything is being sent to the server in its data store. It is keeping all the information, right? So for later purpose, maybe it can be sent to the syslog. For later purpose, if you want to verify what user performed what activity at what time, that all you can check centrally. That comes under, that is your accounting and auditing.
Right.
Now
Okay.
coming to the this seems actually kind of a story. I mean, okay, one user gets connected and this happens. So far whatever we have discussed, it seems like a story only, right? But we haven't discussed about in this story who is making this work together, right? It means who is responsible. So in networking word, what we say is protocol,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it? So there are two protocols here. ISE is the substitution of the ACS. ACS we used to use earlier. Now Cisco has announced end of support, end of sale as well. Now the ISE ACS has been upgraded in the form of ISE with the vast feature, with the more additional features, right? But anyhow, the protocols between the endpoint, or between the client and the server, there are two protocols used: TACAX and Radius, right? So as you see here, TACAX is a Cisco proprietary, right, which is used between a Cisco devices and ACS, or the ISE server in this case, right, which encrypts each packet before it is sent on the network. So there is encryption level. So in TACAX, actually, if we are using TACAX, so whatever packet it is leaving, it will be always encrypted form, not as in the plain text, right? So and TACAX, as we already discussed about authentication, authorization, these two parts will be happening one by one. So first authentication will be happening, and then once the authentication is done, authorization will be performed, right? TACAX works on TCP protocol, port number 49, and all packets are encrypted between ISE, ACS server, or the router. And coming to Radius, this is another protocol which is open standard, and it supports communication between users and client-like routers. Again, this is open standard, so if non-Cisco product, non-Cisco the different vendor devices will support Radius, including Cisco, right? Here, how the authentication authorization happens, it happens together. It means authentication and authorization will be performed together in case of radius, right? And only the password encrypted here if we are using radius, but the packet sent back and forth between ACS or the client or the server and client as in the plain text, right? It uses UDP protocol, port number 18, 12 or 13, or the another range 1645 or 46.
Okay, so here you are saying that ACAX is actually between Cisco device and the ECS server, which is the authentication server, just like ICE, right?
So actually
And
one becomes, yeah, true. So actually one becomes as in server and one becomes as in client. So let's go back to the topology over here. So for example, you are connected. This is a Cisco switch and this is ICE, right? So in this, now when it gets connected, since you have configured switch as in client, now switch is acting as in client, ICE is acting as in server. This guy is server, right? And this is client. So when this PC gets connected, I have told client, send all the information, whoever gets connected to you, send everything to the server. So now anyways, TACAX and radius both will work between this.
okay,
Right? So it is like, if it is Cisco vendor, if it is Cisco product, we can use TACAX. But if it is not, then we have option of using radius.
okay, I see. So you mean to say, if it is if it is just Cisco product, then between test PC and switch, when the test PC wants to try to telnet the switch, that is a which protocol? Which is it TACAX or radius?
Now, at a time you can implement one. So either you can implement TACAX based on your environment. If you don't have any other devices, only Cisco devices, you can use TACAX. But if you have other vendor product as well, in that case, you can use radius.
I see.
All right. So there are some messages as well. It's not like I'm sorry. So if you see here the TACAX authentication message, so there are three messages basically: start, reply, or continue. Start is something that the client will be sending that start message towards server, and once server receives it, it will reply to the client. Now, once this start and reply happens, after that the continue is, I mean, the back and forth happening between client and server. So the AAA client used to respond to the AAA server request for the username and password and the possible values. So continuous means from there the negotiation will be happening, or the conversation happening, or the authentication will be happening continuously. So for example, user gets connected, right? TACAX will send a start message saying, hey ICE, you know what? There is one user got connected to me. Tell me what to do. So ICE, okay, ask for the username, right? So the server will send and reply, okay, can you ask for the username, right? So the switch will give the prompt to the user. Okay, the user has entered this username. So now from now onwards, the continue will start. So in continue, username, then ICE again will ask, okay, can you ask user to enter the password, right? So username and password both are now sent to the ICE. It will check its database and authenticate based on the result. Either it will accept it, reject it, or if there is an error, maybe partial configuration or a couple of the users are existing with same username kind of, or the password, or the continue. So these are the messages, I mean the expected messages that you can see. Is it clear?
Yeah.
All right. And that is how, whatever we have discussed, this is the brief actually explanation of this. As you see, this diagram itself is self-explanatory. So terminal user, the person gets connected or the user gets connected, client will initiate start, and the user trying to connect, server will reply a request username, as in reply, continue username, reply password, continue password, and reply authentication pass or reject or error. Is it clear? That's for the authentication.
Yeah.
All right. Next is authorization. So the authorization is, again, there are a few messages being used for the authorization and accounting messages. So if you see here, authorization, request, response. So again, request is sent by the AAA client and response will be sent by the server. In that response, these are the 5 replies: either fail, pass address, pass reply, or follow, or any error.
So what is there in the request?
That's for the authorization.
You mean to say what resources it can access, etc., right?
Exactly.
So that means for let's say when authentication username and password is okay, then that specific user, what resources needs to be accessed, that request is being sent by the user to the uh, it will be initiated from the user, or it will be initiated by the switch to the
No, so that request will go, the request will be sent by a switch, right?
right,
And
right.
okay, authentication has been done. Now the request is for the authorization, what privilege level I have to assign it to, right? So now the
Right.
ICE, based on the credential, based on the user in its database configured, it will check and say, okay, give the, for example, give the privilege level, let's say 15, full access,
Right. Understood. Yeah.
right? So switch is going to pass the same thing to the client.
Yeah.
The part of the
Understood.
accounting, again, 2 messages types: request and start. So request will be again sent from client to server to indicate a notification of activity, means the activity has been started. This user now has started his activity. The 3 values can be there with the request: either start, stop, or continue. Start means it is initiated. Continue means, I mean, that the activity is going on, right? And then response. This message is sent from the server back to the client about the what is the response, based on the response. All right. So is it clear, Samir?
Yeah. I'm fine.
All right. Those few messages are also there in the with the radius, as in as you see here, we have access request, access accept, and access reject. That is for the, since here the authentication and authorization happens together, or access challenge, right? So access request, this message sent from the client to the server to request an authentication and authorization. Access accept, based on the credentials, AAA client signaling a past authentication from AAA server. Reject, again, server to client based on the credential. And the access challenge is where the optional message can be sent AAA server to client when the additional information is required, such as maybe second password, let's say OTP, two-factor authentication, where you added your username and password and you got the OTP. So if it is required, the radius will challenge uh, and request for the access or to enter. For the accounting, we use 2 messages here: accounting request and accounting response. So the accounting request is going to be sent again from client to server, and response from the server to the client. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So as a part of this ICE, these are the actually basic installation or basic labs that we will be performing. So as you see this document, these few labs actually I have already installed. It seemed like, I mean, I can do it in terms of, I mean, I don't have to demonstrate this because these are kind of very basic things. So we already installed so here, instead of 2012, we have installed 2008. We have installed 2012.
Mhm.
We have also installed Active Directory, and we have also installed certificate Auth30, right? So this is already done. As well as, I mean, coming to the ICE lab, this one identity service engine is already installed. let me take you to the ESXi. Not this. So this is going to be our ESXi. Let me just quickly power it off. It is not required. You should know this. All right. So ICE is already up and running. We'll come to this, but first we are going to the deployment. So we are going to deploy ICE. Now, in order to deploy the ICE, we have different options. Let me quickly go through that as well. Let me see if it is somewhere here. No. We'll take it through this. If it's not there here. Okay. Anyways, so you can deploy the ICE in two forms. One is there is a series of 3200, so 32 ICE series, as in, so you can deploy as in hardware, right? And you have also option to deploy it in virtual machine, right? So we are going to deploy ICE in VMware here. So for the VMware solution, I have ESXi, and that is where I have already created the template. So in order to install ICE, what I have done so far is, as a homework, I have already downloaded the OVA file, right? So normally when to this deploy OVF template, I have already downloaded the OVF template for the ICE and deploy it over here, and that is the result. If I click on edit virtual machine, it has taken by default 4 GB of RAM. Hard disk, it has taken 200 GB, right? And it is already connected. So what I have to do now is I have to just power it on. That's all. And then from there we'll follow. Okay.
This is ICE 2.0 or 2.3?
This is ICE 2.0. We have 2.3, 2.3 as well. Not much difference.
Can we put 2.3?
2.3, I have to see. I have kept this in download actually. I need to see if it is downloaded. No, it's still 1 hour. Okay. But there is no difference. There is a difference between 1 dot and 2, but there is no difference, much difference. I mean, at all difference, I would say, between 2.2, 2.0 and 2.3. Pretty much same. Okay. But the latest is anyways, it is 2.4 as of now.
Yeah, it's okay. We can still install 2.3 because I need to see that GUI.
Okay, fine. So we'll do one thing. As of now, since this is we have, so we'll perform this 2.0 and go to the GUI and perform the basic installation. Anyways, installation is going to be same and the deployment is going to be same again. But yes, maybe from the next class we can. I will offline. I will install it and then start with that 2.3. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure, fine.
All right. So let me power it on. Let's go to the console. So in order to deploy it, in order to install it, there are two options. One is through the OVF template, kind of easy because you have to just mention the number of users, memory calculation, and then hard disk calculation, everything it will do itself. And the other method is manual. Manual is like you have to put everything, you have to give the RAM, the amount of RAM, memory for the RAM, You have to give amount of memory for the hard disk, and you have to connect the data store. You have to connect. All right. So once it detects that image, or once it comes to the detects this ISE, the option here we have, even if it is asking local host, but please type setup to configure the appliance. So I'll type setup. Right now it will ask for the basic information to enter. So for example, enter host name. Right, so host name, I'll say ISE2. Enter IP address. I'm going to put 172.168.100.93. So 92 is ISE1. I'm going to put 93. Net mask 0. Default gateway, everywhere I have put 172.168.100.1 as in the default gateway. Default DNS domain, that is champ.com. Enter. Primary name server means your DNS server. Who is your DNS server? So in this case, 172.168.100.96. Because that Active Directory, and then certificate authority, FTP, and as well as DNS, as well as NTP. Everything is going to be here 96. Secondary name server I do not need, so hit enter. NTP server, put the IP address of NTP server.
So NTP
172.
required, is it?
Yes, it is required. Even if it is not reachable, it will give you the message saying NTP is not reachable. Do you want to try again, or you want to skip? But NTP is kind of mandatory. If NTP is not synchronized, in that case, while adding the, let's say, the endpoints, it could be Active Directory, it could be LDAP, it won't actually join. So that's important.
Wait, where's my Gaudi cards?
Another NTP server. System time zone, that's okay, fine, let it be.
In this set NTP,
Mm-hmm.
let's say I'm doing the installation in my lab.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing the installation in the lab,
Okay.
and I don't have the NTP server as such. How did you configure the NTP server in this?
We can install. We can configure any server. Let's say 2012. So in this case, since we are using 2012, we can do that. I do have already. Let me just open this. So
it's okay for now, but let me ask you those configuration.
I have the link anyways. If I wish to, I would like to. Send that link to you. It is pretty much straightforward. Enter username. By default, I'll keep it as an admin, and the password. So password I'm going to use here, C exclamation SCO underscore 123. And again, SCO underscore 123. Copying first. Now here it is going to check your gateway. Here it is going to check the DNS and the NTP and all. If anything wrong, it will give you the error message. We can skip it. It is not mandatory that it has to be, but in order to bring it in proper functioning, yes, we have to fix these reachability issues.
So just let me know, how do you configure the Active Directory and DNS and
Yes, will do. Yes. All right, so as you see here, the gateway ping failed. So I believe my gateway is this 172.100.1, and it is actually powered off. Let me just quickly power it on. So I just powered it on. Let's see this time. So again, it will verify the reachability from 100.1, which is gateway. Pinging the gateway, pinging the primary. So gateway, since it didn't give any error message, which looks fine then. Pinging the primary name server, it is also able to ping the domain or the DNS server, and virtual machine detected, configuring virtual machine tools. So some templates it will be configuring. So once it is done, it will take close to 25 minutes to 30 minutes to perform the complete installation.
Okay.
So let's complete this process first, and then probably I will head to the next lab, which we have in the another ISE. So
So the OVA is completed.
sorry.
OVA download is completed.
Yeah, OVA download. As I told you, I already deployed it. OVA download. I already deployed it. I just power it on. Oh, that one, the 2.3 you're saying?
Yeah.
No, it's still going on. I mean, it will take some time. So I believe offline I'll install it. Instead of ISE1 and ISE2, I'll install 3.2, ISE1 and ISE2.
Okay.
All right, so do not use Control-C from this point on. Now it will do some installation. You see here installing applications, installing ISE, and it will take some time.
All right. We can move ahead. I think so.
But we will keep on watching it. We will monitor it anyways. All right, so how to take a snapshot of virtual machines, not required though. If it is, then we'll cover it with this the new installation. Let's go through this web portal introduction. All right, this is 100.92 ISE, and this is the home page actually. Once you log into it, you will get into home page. So in previous recently, if you have noticed, we have given the IP address, right? So same IP address we have to use over here since it is HTTPS. So yes, we have to use HTTPS. Now this message over here, it says the setup assistance requires the Adobe Flash player. This is required. Why? It's because you see that the background like system summary, and these are the home pages where it will display the graph actually. What is the system summary information? What is the authentication information? If this Adobe Flash is not there, it will not display it. It will look like this only. We'll do one thing: download the upgrade from Adobe. I believe I have already internet connectivity to this laptop as well. Yep. All right, it's installed now. Your antivirus software must allow to install software. This is true. let's say file, run. Yes. Did I choose to download this as well? No, I don't think so. Anyways, okay. So this is the home page of the ICE. Here you'll see the matrix. To view this page, ensure that Adobe Flash Player version 11.1 or greater is installed. Then only it will display these information. So as of now, the profiler, the posture, compliance, everything is blank. It won't show anything. We will check that. I got stuck something. All right. So this tab, this is home page. Operations. In operations, we have different tabs, sub tabs, like radius, live log if you want to monitor, TACAX live log, reports if you want to pull out, troubleshoot if you want to collect some logs. We'll talk about that. Policies for the authentication and authorization, for the profiling posture. We'll again talk about, I mean, individually, but yes, if you want to give some authentication policy, you have to go through this policy and authentication and give the authentication policy.
So so there are various tabs you said, right? Policy tab is for?
Policies for setting up the authentication and authorization.
Okay. And what is this profiling and posture?
That will talk individually. It will come individually. Different.
Okay.
Right.
Fine.
And then we have guest access. So like settings. So this is for the guest users if we have.
Mm-hmm. In the wireless, is it?
In the wireless, and we will be using this. Manage accounts. The most important here are the the key point here, the administration. That is where you add the different, like let's say identity management. You have where you can, identity means what? I mean, the end user identity, a name could be identity. So identities, it could be external identities. It could be external identities like LDAP, Active Directory, Certificate of Authority. All right, identity source sequence. We'll talk about this. This will come in a moment. We'll talk about.
So various external identities. You
Mm-hmm.
mentioned Active Directory, LDAP,
Mm-hmm.
and Certificate Authority. Can we brush up the theory? I mean, what is the difference between each? You're going to talk, right? That?
Uh, we'll talk. Yes, we'll talk. We'll have a discussion on this. Right. So since you just reminded me, let me go through this quickly.
That SXP, that is a security group tag, right?
Yes, true.
Okay.
Right. So here you will have the again going further for with the ICE. So what is identity that we have already discussed? One of the issue of the identity in the world of secure network access control is the identity of a person or device. So any identification of the person or device called identity. Stores where these identities are stored as in kind of the database. So it's a database of all identities. Internal identity stores like Cisco ISE has internal user database, which you can create internally. External identity stores like you are getting those users from outside, maybe from Active Directory, right? So as you see here, what is Active Directory? Normally normally in production, normally in any company organization, what we do, whenever a new user, a new employee joins, we create the database. We give the username and password, isn't it? We give the ID, we give the maybe the number, mobile number, or the telephone number, isn't it, where it is created. So normally nowadays I would say 90% we use Active Directory. So his information will be fed to the Active Directory. So ultimately Active Directory will have all employees information. If you have 1,000 employees, in that case 1,000 username and password will be there. Not only the username, but also the who is your manager, what's manager ID, right? All these things will be added to the Active Directory. Is it clear? So Active
Yeah.
Directory, what it Active Directory is and where do you install it? Active Directory, normally we install it in the Microsoft server, uh, a server platform like 2003, 2000, 2008, 2012, latest is to 2016. So that is where we can configure the Active Directory or install the Active Directory, right? LDAP is a protocol now that is going to work between Active Directory and your ISE, right? So it's a kind of a protocol which will be used to take out all the information from Active Directory to the ISE. So it works as in the, the communication point. Who makes Active Directory and ISE communicate? LDAP, right? So LDAP, as you see here, it is used in
So,
TCP port number
so you
389.
said what did you say? You said between Active Directory and ICE, the LDAP is the protocol, is it?
So LDAP is the protocol which communicates, yes, the communication between Active Directory AD and ISE. Lightweight directory access protocol, right? So initially, as you see here, it works on TCP port number 389, and the username and password are sent in the clear text by default when using LDAP. So by default, when you add LDAP, right, it doesn't do encryption and all, everything will be plain text, right? Now that's kind of not scalable, it is not secure. So in order to make it secure and scalable, what we can do is we can use the transport layer SSL or TLS protocol over LDAP on the port TCP port number 636. So once we use this additional authentication in this, the all packets will be encrypted between the AD and ISE,
I see.
right? Two-factor authentication is the one which we talked about, like VPN. So in VPN, like you will get the token number, and once you get the token number, you have to get connected to the VPN. You will enter username and password, right? One-time
Okay.
password is normally used in banking. Two-factor authentication is called one-time password, where you, after log into the bank homepage or account, you will be getting
Mhm.
some OTP for each transaction.
Okay.
All right. So that's the brief of Active Directory and LDAP. Now the certificate authority is something, or the CA. It is something you want to authenticate your hardware. Even you want
So
to
how did
authenticate
we
your ISE.
how did we directly came from Active Directory LDAP to the two-factor authentication? What is the jump between this?
LDAP
Uh,
and no, I mean these are the different options. So for example,
mhm,
two-factor authentication is where users are trying to log in, right?
mhm,
In that
mhm.
time, as the part of authentication, we can
Mm-hmm.
use two-factor authentication to authenticate the to authenticate the user. So one, we have AAA,
Mm-hmm.
right? So either we will use AAA or we will
Mm-hmm.
use two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication, maybe an email will be sent to you where you will have a code. You have to add that code while logging,
Okay.
right? And the same thing goes for the one-time password as well. So this is another type. You won't be getting any email, but you will get maybe a mobile, you will get the one-time password.
Okay.
So these are the part of actually authentication.
You should tell me more.
All right, let me get back to the ICE and also see this. Please restart your browser, that I'll do, and finish. It is already finished. Why it's giving this page? It's irritating. Oh, okay. Let me go off. All right. Let me restart this page, or probably, yep. Let me remove this and start it new. So the Microsoft server we can make as an the certificate authority. So let's say I have installed 2012, and in that 2012 server I have installed certificate authority. Now that certificate authority, that machine can act as a certificate authority, and in order to authenticate or in order to provide the identity to any of the hardware, let's say we have installed two ICE, right? Now I want to register them with the certificate authority, right? So what I'll do, I will download the certificate. So there are two parts here in certificate authority. There are two parts. One is the identity certificate and one is the CA certificate. Identity certificate is based on your username, password, IP address, domain, and the other information. Once, let's say I have two devices, in this case two ICE, and I want to register ICE 1 with the certificate authority, right? So I will generate a request, that is the identity request assign, and in that request you will have IP address, domain, and all those information. I will register with the certificate authority. Certificate authority will approve it and send a file to you. Now once you install that file sent by certificate authority, now you are registered with the certificate authority.
Mm-hmm. So when you say you're going to give the IP address and all those information of whose of
Of the
ICE,
device, yeah, of the device, the one which you want to register with the certificate authority.
of the device. Here, the
Oh,
device means ICE or the end device.
it could be, yeah, it could be ICE, it could be end device, it could be anything.
I see. So generally, what is the use case? Is it is a ICE generally we use that as a identity or
Yep.
same device? Okay.
ICE normally here we will be using as an identity, yes, but in order for the replication to work properly, right, I have to also register with the certificate authority. That it will be the part of, I believe. And the next will be, okay, Active Directory integration and identity source sequence, and then we have LDAP integration and identity certificate. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
registration with the self-signed certificate and then certificate authority. So it will come. It will be the part of. So we'll be having lab of this.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's still going on. Let it go. Coming to this. All right, so the first lab, what we're going to do is, so that was the overview of the web portal introduction. Now let's add the Active Directory integration and identity source sequence. So now we are up to, or let me stop recording. Just give me a moment.